It's a joy to be with you, and I've been absolutely loving what has been shared so far. So I'll sort of take the talking stick and run with it perhaps a little further. So I'm going to share my screen, if I might. So in the time I have today, I'd like to share with you what I call a whole world view, cosmology of a conscious. We've spoken about already about conscious being fundamental to the new paradigm, and I continue that perspective. But what do we mean, and how does then cosmic mind, cosmic consciousness, sentience embody itself in a universe that doesn't just exist, but exists and evolves from simplicity to complexity? So what I'll share with you today is where my journey of direct experience since I was 4 years old and walking between worlds and hopefully following the evidence and the exploration of the nature of reality has brought me to this point, correlates quite nicely with what Federico said, and to some degree also with Richard. And I do believe this is all a work in progress. I believe there's now a confluence, a convergence of science and spirituality, where we're all saying pretty much that conscious is fundamental, as indeed Albert Einstein perceived, as Max Planck did. And I'd like to share in this particular presentation, perhaps a slightly different but very much complementary perspective of what Richard and Federico have already shared. How in this model does the appearance of our finite universe, and what I've written about in the cosmic hologram is the evidence. Everything I share today is evidenced. And in the book, I do a great deal of bringing the evidence together at all scales of existence across numerous fields of research. So what I'll share today, I don't have time to share the evidence except in a couple of instances, but all I share today is well evidenced. It's very much based on the Einsteinian view that the universe is as simple as it can be, but no simple, but it is a conscious, sentient, living, unified entity. As Sir James Jeans said, a great thought rather than a great thing in the infinite and eternal mind that Einstein called cosmic mind, that others have already called God. So we've come a journey from Newton, who I always love as perhaps the last of the alchemists rather than just one of the first of the natural philosophers, but a perspective of things. But what Newton did, as Richard mentioned earlier, he took what he experienced on Earth, and then he realized that equivalence extended beyond the Earth. And I love what Richard shared about equivalence, because when we look at the nature of equivalence, it's our way show, it's a way shower to deeper and ever more fundamental perspectives of the nature of reality. Beginning of the 20th century, as Federico referred to, and also Richard, came along these two paradigm shifting perspectives from that Newtonian viewpoint to a cosmology of the very large, which was relativity physics, and the perspective of reality at the very small scales of quantum physics. But as we'll go on to share, those are completely interpenetrative. So we're not in the place of just perceiving quantum phenomena at the very small. We're not at the perspective of seeing the relativity at the very large. But all of them, to some degree or other, even with the clues that quantum physics gave us, with the clues that relativistic physics gave us, interconnectivity, we still, over the last nearly 100 years, have put that perspective to one side. We've ignored the elephant in the room in mainstream science, which is the nature of consciousness and its fundamental nature to the whole of reality. So we've still lived in an old, to my mind, unsustainable and fundamentally misguided perspective of reality as being made up of things and of separate things. And that perspective of the illusion of separation has taken us to where we are now. And what we're now realizing, and Federico and Richard, and I'm sure the other speakers will refer to, we're waking up to remember we're inseparable. We're all of us aspects of a universe that exists and evolves as a unified entity. Going back to what Federico was talking about, unity. For me, what's crucial is that new discoveries, and I could only have written the Cosmic Hologram 2017, really with discoveries over the prior few years to that. But what is really key for me is the evidence. We're now presented with ever more compelling evidence that what we're sharing is that we're on the right direction. But what this is doing is it's offering us an integral perspective to how our universe emerges from deeper realms of causation and intention, and does so meaningfully. And so we're seeing that instead of mind being epiphenomenon, consciousness an epiphenomenon of a physical universe, that the appearance of the universe itself is an emergent phenomenon from deeper realms of consciousness and mind. And whilst it was ushered in by quantum relativistic physics, it's only now possible by understanding the role of information. And I really want to stress from the get-go that when I talk about information within the framework of a whole world view, of a living, sentient, evolving universe, that I'm talking about not random data. I'm talking about meaningful information. But what we need to add to this framework is some work that's been done in understanding the reality of black holes and what they tell us about the nature of reality and information, which the so-called holographic principle extends to the entire universe. So what this perspective is revealing, and as I say, it's absolutely based on evidence, is the primacy of mind and consciousness, articulated as digitized ones and zeros of meaningful in hyphen formation. And that articulation, when we think of an English language with 26 letters of the alphabet of themselves not embodying any meaning, when we combine them as words and sentences and poetry and songs, they embody meaning to us. What I'd like to share today is how this perspective shows that our universe does so by actually articulating the cosmic mind that is embodied in this great thought form we call our universe as such digitized universal alphabet of just 2 letters. As simple as it can be, but no simpler. But from those 2 digitized ones and zeros, just as in our technologies, we can describe an image, a vision, a sound, a name, all that we choose to in terms of strings of ones and zeros that of themselves don't have meaning, but when the string is written, is encoded, is decoded, is translated, it offers us a communication of meaning. And this is represented through dynamic and literally relational patterns. Somebody was asking in the chat, what's love? For me, this is love. Love is the absolute foundation, the conscious foundation of our living and sentient universe, because love is the profound interconnectedness and ultimate unity of all that is. So already it's been noted that physical reality is extremely ephemeral. I mean, the universe is parsimonious. It doesn't use any more energy matter than it absolutely has to. And yet from that innate simplicity emerges and evolves this absolutely wonderful, radical diversity. But that ephemeralness, as Federica referred to, it's no dash thingness. It's the fields of relational information that is that is the stuff, that is the basic stuff of our universe. And I'll come back to this point of non-locality or entanglement later. But before I do, I just want to sort of ground what we're talking about, because the nature of information itself is, we often think of information as non-physical, and maybe we need to restate what we mean by physical, because in 2012, an experiment by Antoine Berroux and Eric Lutz and others showed they demonstrated that information of itself is physical, because by deleting a digitized bit of it releases heat. Just as when we rub our hands together, we generate heat. We look at that as energy matter, but as I'll go on to share, information is expressed in complementary ways as energy matter, and I'll show space-time. But this was a breakthrough experiment, because not only did it show that information is as physical as what we might call energy matter space-time, but it was in line with theoretical predictions by Leo Szilard and Rolf Landau and others. So we're beginning to have both discoveries and experiments that show this, as well as a theoretical framework that supports it. But the evidence is at all scales, from the Planck scale that Alexander mentioned earlier, which is the most fundamental measure of our universe. And the Planck scale is actually just shows 5 fundamental attributes of our universe: energy, matter, space, time, and temperature. Just 5. And I'll come back to why just 5 and how they all pull together to offer this framework in a moment. All of the evidence at all scales, from the Planck scale to the entire universe and across numerous fields of research, are showing this. And that includes cosmology and physics and chemistry and meteorology and systems theory, and shows that the same patterns pervade the entirety of our universe, whether they're human collective behaviors, ecosystems, or the way in which cities and galaxies form. And I'll come back again, this is meaningful information that literally informs the reality of our universe. In the last couple of years, and actually since the Cosmic Hologram was published, in 2017, a coalition of cosmologists found the signature of the Cosmic Hologram within the entirety of space. And what they discovered was that at an early epoch, about 380,000 years after the beginning of our universe, which I talk about not being in a big bang, which wasn't big and it wasn't a bang, it was minute, as we know, but we imply with a bang it was chaotic, and yet it was incredibly ordered and fine-tuned. The actual means by which cosmic mind created our universe to exist also embedded within it an innate evolutionary impulse. But what we found is this informed and holographically manifested perspective of a universe. Because what we're seeing is within this cosmic microwave background, we're seeing the signature of the holographic means by which cosmic mind literally projects reality into what we call our universe. So within space-time, the flow of time maintains universal causality, yet quantum mechanics only works if our universe is also in its entirety non-locally interconnected, entangled. And this too was proven in 2018 by entangling photons of light in a laboratory, starlight from 600 light years away, and light from quasars, which is a very powerful active cause of ancient galaxies, the furthest of which was 12.2 billion light years away. In other words, the light from that quasar left there 12.2 billion years ago, and yet it correlated with starlight from only 600 light years away and photons of light within the laboratory itself. Now, this is showing us what quantum mechanics needs to work, that our entire universe is non-locally connected and ultimately unified. And what this does, it supports what a number of our researchers call supernormal phenomena: telepathy, remote viewing, remote cognition, intuition, near-death experiences, synchronicities, all the things that mainstream science have just had no ability to explain. This emergent cosmology of consciousness is able to do. Now, what it's now showing us is how it does so. And we need to put together only literally 3 laws, fundamental laws of physics or cosmology, which are 3 laws previously understood as being of thermodynamics, together with the holographic principle to show us that our universe exists and evolves as a unified, innately informed and holographically manifest entity, as a great thought of cosmic mind. So by expanding and restating the 3 laws of thermodynamics into 3 laws of information, such infodynamics show us how. First of all, The first law talks about energy and matter. It talks about how the energy of a contained system is conserved through time. So in other words, within a contained system such as our universe, quantized energy and matter is universally conserved. But when we now realize, thanks to Beroux and his co-experimenters and Landauer and others, we understand now how information expressed as quantized energy matter is universally conserved through time. This enables our universe to exist, but it says nothing about how it evolves. That's why we need a second law of thermodynamics. And this second law talks about a concept called entropy. And again, in the second law of thermodynamics, how a contained system, the entropy of a contained system increases through time. But Ludwig Boltzmann, who came up with this concept of entropy way back in the middle 1800s, before even atoms' existence had been confirmed, talked of entropy as the energetic microstates of such a system. But now quantum informational researchers are now expressing, instead of entropy, entropy as the informational content of a system. So for our universe, it began, we know cosmologically, in its lowest state of entropy. And ever since that moment, 13.8 billion years ago, the entropy of our universe has increased. As space has expanded and time has flowed, the informational content of our universe has increased. So the expansion of the holographic boundary of space and the flow of time literally continually adds informational content. Now, that of itself is a how-to. It's like a how-to manual algorithm of our universe. But because our universe embodies universal meaning, so its informational content is innately meaningful. It is in-formational. So this second law of infodynamics shows how our universe goes beyond just existing to be able to evolve from simplicity to complexity. The reason there's a third law of infodynamics or third law of thermodynamics expanded to infodynamics is that in a contained system, its temperature is inversely proportional to its entropy. So from the very beginning of our universe, which began at the highest possible temperature, the Planck temperature, 10 billion trillion degrees above absolute zero, the highest temperature, the lowest entropy. As space expands and time flows, the temperature drops and the entropy increases. And that's what's been happening for the last 13.8 billion years. Now, our informed and holographic universe reveals itself through universal patterns and processes that not only pervade the so-called natural world, but throughout human systems and behaviors. And we're finding now this geometric, relational, informational signature of the cosmic hologram being discovered at all scales, from atoms to our planetary home, Mother Earth, Gaia, to our solar system, to vast galactic clusters, and as I mentioned earlier, the whole of space. This framework is revealing, I think all our frameworks are showing, is that we in our entire universe are relational in-formation. We meaningfully inform and are informed by the great cosmic thought that is our universe, where mind and consciousness aren't something we have, but literally what we and the whole world are. But crucially, this isn't just a cosmology of consciousness. This is an evolutionary cosmology, because it's also revealing evidentially that our universe, as I think it was Federico, but Richard was talking to this too, unity, oneness, choosing to learn about itself, to experience itself, to embody itself, to individuate within itself, creatures such as ourselves. But this is so much more as an evolutionary consciousness and an evolutionary cosmology about human consciousness. It's about a universe that itself exists and evolves as a unified, sentient, living entity. It exists to evolve. This is something I'm writing about, I've written about in my next book, Gaia, Her Story. And I've just fallen in love. I've fallen in love ever beyond wonder and awe with our universe that began in its simplest form, but it had the potentiality, it had everything it needed to evolve from simplicity to complexity, incredibly fine-tuned, the simplest and most ordered, innately ordered first moment of a big breath. A primordial Om. Before it was transparent to light, it was transparent to sound. For the first 380,000 years, our universe sang itself. It sang itself into stars and galaxies. When stars began to form from the primordial hydrogen and the helium was crucial because some of that nucleosynthesis to build up to all 94 elements was so incredibly challenging for the universe itself that without that primordial helium in the mix, carbon couldn't have been synthesized. We would not be here. And it went on to interstellar clouds and ultimately to birthing planetary systems. Embodied from that very first moment was the potential for all of this to unfold, with our sun, our moon, and Gaia, our planetary home, as a triple system, each needing the other to co-evolve and for Gaia to nurture her biological life forms. Our entire solar system exists and evolves as a resonant, harmonic whole. Gaia's a water planet. Without it, we could not be here. She embodies all the elements of the entire universe. She is in a co-creative evolutionary partnership. Not just her biosphere, her biological organisms, her biological children, such as us, but her geosphere, her hydrosphere, her waters, her atmosphere, all co-create together in coherence, in super coherence, as a whole organism, a whole sentient, living, evolving being. And biological emergence, each successive hology of informed complexity embodies new properties, phenomena, behaviors. Organs are more complex than cells, they're more hierarchically complex than cells. Bodies are more hierarchically complex. Ecosystems are more hierarchically complex. The entire Gaia sphere is. And stress, challenge drives evolution, a progressive evolutionary impulse, and an ongoing collaboration of competition, healthy competition, but also cooperation. We're even more than stardust. The hydrogen in our bodies is as old as the universe. Our DNA in every single cell, when we stretch it out, is 2 meters long. Each of our bodies, I can see George on the screen and Richard and Alexander. When we take the entire DNA in each of our bodies, it stretches across the diameter of our entire solar system. For the entirety of humanity, our entire DNA, when rolled out, would stretch 10 times the visible diameter of our galaxy. We embody distributed, not just our minds. There's a wonderful documentary called The Blob, Intelligence Without a Brain. Slime molds don't have a brain. They don't even have a nervous system, but they're intelligent. Non-local intelligence, distributed intelligence is the nature of our reality, of our universe. And we, in this perspective, are microcosmic co-creators of our universe, embodying its evolutionary impulse. We're its evolutionary, co-evolutionary partners and co-evolutionary partners with Gaia, its great and finite thought within the infinity and eternal cosmic mind of unity, of wholeness. It's differentiated as a great thought, never separate. We are differentiated of its unity and diversity, but we're inseparable. It exists to evolve. and everything in existence has meaning and purpose. And we're its microcosmic co-creators. So what do we now choose to co-create together? And just to finish, Gaia, her story is by perceiving and experiencing our entire universe and planetary home as a living, sentient, and embodying innate meaning and evolutionary impulse. Gaia, her story will offer a deeply ecological, hopeful, and emergent perspective in these times of our choice. And it converges with ancient and indigenous wisdom teachings, how the ultimate oneness gives rise to an exploration of its own beingness in the doingness of the great thoughts that we call universes. And Gaia, her story invites us to remember that we're all Gaians. So I'll stop there.